The AAA gaming industry has done amazing levels of damage to how people determine whether something is deserving of praise or not. For the past decade or so, basically every big money video game publisher has tried to force us into believing that the really good games are the ones with giant budgets and overlong cutscenes and cinematic gameplay that never demands too much from the broadest audience possible. The modern AAA industry has gotten incredibly complacent since the mid-PS4 era, I'd say, to the point where AAA games nowadays, which are supposed to be the height of the medium, are basically just expected to have subpar optimization and unoriginal gameplay, despite being more expensive than ever to buy on day one. It's for this reason that so many people flipped out at Baldur's Gate 3 winning Game of the Year, throwback to this video I made last month, because after a decade plus of mainstream outlets just showering praise on the latest third-person cinematic action game, you can't be surprised when anything that breaks the monotony is met with passionate distaste from the average AAA gamer. Last month, the AAAers were wetting themselves because a turn-based game won Game of the Year, and this month, the AAAers are wetting themselves because a side-scroller is getting good reviews. So Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is about to launch, and it's been getting fantastic reception, which I couldn't be happier about. The original 2D Prince of Persia is one of the first video games I ever played, so I was totally on board with a return-to-form Prince of Persia side-scroller like this, especially since the franchise has been effectively dead since the early 360 years. Judging by the review scores as well as the public perception of the demo that went live a few days ago, The Lost Crown is starting the year very strong, and it's a nice potential start to Ubisoft's comeback tour after they've spent the last few years basically becoming the embodiment of everything wrong with AAA gaming. Between this game and Assassin's Creed Mirage, it seems like Ubisoft has finally realized that people don't want 50 variants of the same open world game over and over and over again, but while AC Mirage felt like a somewhat limp imitation of the thing people wanted, The Lost Crown is a genuinely excellent and unique game that does a lot of awesome stuff that you rarely see from AAA franchises nowadays. But what's that, you say? It's a side-scroller and therefore cannot be good? Yeah, sorry, I forgot, because that's actually really stupid. The review embargo for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was lifted about a week before launch, which is always a good sign, by the way. I love seeing publishers be this confident in their games. And it's doing extremely well, hovering around the mid to high 80s, with several of the major outlets like GameSpot giving it a 9 out of 10, and some of them even going higher than that. It seemed like this was going to be a great moment all around, but almost immediately upon the praise going public, a number of people took to Twitter to express their disappointment that a side-scrolling game was getting this kind of positive attention, because apparently there are a lot of people out there who genuinely think that because 3D games exist, 2D games are inherently outdated and or boring.
That makes no sense.
Now, before we get into the screenshots of people being all silly and stupid, I wanted to get something out of the way, and that's this. Just because something is old doesn't mean it's outdated. You heard this a lot during the Baldur's Gate 3 drama, and you're about to hear it a lot again in this video, but directed at The Lost Crown. This idea that because a style of gameplay is older and has been superseded by other, more technically demanding forms of gameplay, that somehow means the original gameplay style can no longer be good or unique or innovative. But that simply isn't true. While it is true that 2D games have existed longer than 3D games, that doesn't mean 2D games have no artistic value or can't offer an amazing experience. Think about it, black and white movies were succeeded by color movies, but that doesn't mean nobody uses black and white nowadays. That doesn't mean that once colored film became an option, that black and white filmmaking completely lost any use or artistic value that anyone would ever have with it. A black and white color scheme in a movie has all kinds of artistic qualities that fully colorized movies cannot replicate, similar to how 2D video games have all kinds of artistic qualities that simply cannot be replicated by a 3D one. Card games like Solitaire and Blackjack, the kind of games that you play with a 52 card deck, those games have been succeeded by much more elaborate and, quote, modern games like fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering, but that doesn't mean all those classic 52 card deck card games are now just out of style and completely unworthy of attention. Because even though games like Solitaire and Blackjack are old, there's something about playing those classic games that a more elaborate card game cannot replicate. Again, kind of like how 2D games have things that 3D games simply cannot replicate either. I'm just so over this idea that because a certain gameplay style has evolved in some way, that now means the original gameplay style has peaked and cannot be improved upon or praised in the modern day, just because something else came after it. But just like the AAAers whined about Baldur's Gate 3 winning awards instead of Spider-Man 2, they're now whining about the latest Prince of Persia game being praised while also being a 2D side-scroller. And I'm going to make fun of these people, because it's honestly just gotten kinda sad. For example, when GameSpot announced the other day they were giving the game a 9 out of 10, Daniel Offerdahl says, "Garbage side-scroller, your reviewer has such low standards." That's right, kids, if you think a side-scrolling game is good, that's because you just have low standards. So next time someone says something nice about Super Mario World or Ori and the Blind Forest, you can just tell them that their standards are too low. Their standards are too low to enjoy things. Shinobi does the usual Shinobi thing and posts a big compilation of all the major outlets giving the game good scores, to which the Variety of Life responds, "A step back in gaming, a side-scroller getting ratings like that. Yikes." I mean, if the opinions of games journalists are really that important to you, the journalists nominated a side-scroller for Game of the Year. Like, last month they did that. But what really gets me is you think it's a step backward in gaming for a side-scroller to be averaging in the mid to high 80s from critics. You genuinely think a side-scroller cannot be that good. God, Twitter is wild, man. Like, people will just say this stuff without an ounce of shame or self-awareness. Because, like, nobody would ever say this kind of stuff about literally any other medium. Someone makes a movie that's not a big budget blockbuster and it gets good reviews. You wouldn't expect someone to then be like, yeah, but it didn't have crazy CGI or overpaid actors, so step back that it's getting good reviews. Like, everyone would agree that if someone said something like that, they would be a fucking moron. But for some reason, that same logic doesn't apply in video game context with some people. It's so stupid. Like, you ever wonder why people like me are so critical of the AAA gaming industry? This is why. Like, legitimately, this is the reason why. The fact that we've gotten to the point where people unironically think side-scrolling games are inherently not worthy of praise. Like, the fact that we're here should be all the evidence you need that AAA gaming has done irreversible damage to the way people judge video games. Alumide says, why a side-scroller, though? Abel responds, Prince of Persia started out as a side-scroller. Also, the Rayman devs made this game. Olumide responds, a lot of games started out as side-scrollers. It's 2024.
But what does that have to do with anything?
No. He's got a point.
What the fuck does the year 2024 have to do with anything? Like, genuinely. It's 2024. Yeah, so? Was there a fucking decree from the king that we can't like side-scrollers in this current year of ours? Am I gonna go to jail for saying Metroid Dread was good? Am I gonna be flogged in the town square because I like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night? Also, insert joke here about Broforce, which is another really good side-scroller that you should play. I just couldn't think of a good joke to put it in the script. But honestly, this really bugs me. Like, oh, it's 2024, so obviously side-scrollers are lame and dumb, and I'm not even going to explain myself because me simply telling you the current year should be all the evidence you need that side-scrollers are lame and dumb. Like, you guys truly think that just because a genre has been around for a while, that means it's no longer worthy of praise, like, just inherently. It's insane. Play an indie game, like, for once in your life, or a AA game, or a retro game, or go to an arcade. I'm begging you, play something that's not AAA. This isn't healthy. Here's one that started to make the rounds a bit. You may have seen this. Cycle Gamer says, damn, they done turned Prince of Persia into a side-scrolling Metroidvania beat 'em up.
I'm gonna tell him.
Don't you dare.
Soldier responded, you never played Prince of Persia before? And then Cycle Gamer says, the first one, no. I watched someone play the first one, but I did play the second one. That's irrelevant to what I'm saying, though. Prince of Persia evolved into a big-budget AAA game in the 7th gen. That's not true. We are in the 9th gen, and they come back with this indie-style bullshit. I don't like that. So, straight up, you just care about the budget. Like, read this. Stare at this. You're not trying to hide it. You're just straight up saying you're upset about this game because it doesn't look expensive. I mean, usually people try to at least hide dog shit takes like this, or try to, like, sprinkle the dog shit in with other moderate takes, but no, you're just, like, flat out, boom. It doesn't look like a big budget game, so it's indie style bullshit. God, and we're only in January. This year is wild. Naturally, OP was getting flamed for this, and then rather than taking a look at what anyone was actually flaming him for, he decided to try and defend himself by saying, "Some dummies are posting this like I didn't know Prince of Persia used to be a side-scrolling game. Most games evolve over time, and Prince of Persia did that in the 7th gen. Again, that's still not true. It's not often that a game goes backwards in terms of technology or gameplay style. The fact that you think side-scrolling is inherently a step backward for gameplay, that's the fucking problem, you doofus. Games like GTA and Metal Gear were top-down at one point. Can you imagine those games going back to that as a new installment? Absolutely not. Side note, I'm reminded of Bomberman Act Zero, a game where a publisher tried to evolve a long-running franchise that had a formula that worked, and then the game was fucking terrible, and they had to go back to the old style anyways. Just saying, evolving gameplay isn't always inherently a good thing. But let's go back to this. First of all, you keep saying Prince of Persia evolved in the 7th generation, but that's not even close to true. Most people consider Sands of Time to be peak Prince of Persia, and that game came out during the 6th generation, the PS2 and the GameCube. But if your argument here wasn't specifically about Sands of Time, and if the point you're trying to make is about when Prince of Persia evolved, and like when this series stopped being a side-scroller, that technically would have been Prince of Persia 3D, which came out in 1999, and is also a gigantic piece of garbage. Again, evolving in the way that you are thinking of it does not inherently make a game good. Basically, what I'm getting at here is that you have no idea what you're actually saying. But as for the other point you make about GTA and Metal Gear both starting as top-down games, or I guess GTA was a top-down game, Metal Gear was more fixed camera, or I don't know, like however you want to describe these games. GTA and Metal Gear both started out with different gameplay formulas. And yeah, if you started your argument with these examples, your argument may have held a little bit more water. But even still, it's not a good argument. Because, first of all, I'm sure there's plenty of people who would love to get a top-down Metal Gear or a top-down GTA game again just for novelty's sake. But secondly, and more importantly, Metal Gear and GTA don't use top-down or fixed-camera gameplay styles anymore because those styles wouldn't fit with the identity those franchises have developed for themselves. Prince of Persia, on the other hand, has basically been in limbo for the last 15 years, to the point that the franchise doesn't really have a concrete identity anymore. Friendly reminder that the last Prince of Persia game was The Forgotten Sands from 2010, and I can guarantee that most of you watching this video forgot this game existed. And yeah, Prince of Persia may have had some awesome installments in the past, like Sands of Time and Warrior Within, which I have a soft spot for, but at no point in this franchise's history, aside from the classic 2D games, ironically, at no point in the Prince of Persia's history, at least in the last couple decades, has there ever been a central identity that stuck around for more than 2 consecutive games. Because, yeah, Sands of Time was an awesome game, and it was an awesome, template for the series. But then, the next game after Sands of Time was the fucking edge-fest of Warrior Within. Then the next game after that was Two Thrones, which was a middle ground between fun 3D action platformer and edgy God of War ripoff. Then the next game after that was the 2008 reboot, which was way more lighthearted and colorful, but then the next game after that was Forgotten Sands, which went back to the Sands of Time continuity, and then the series stopped for 14 years. I want you to look me in the face hole and tell me what the central, untouchable identity of Prince of Persia was prior to Lost Crown. Tell me what the central identity of this franchise was over the last 2 decades. Go. Oh, you can't do that? Because the franchise was all over the fucking place? Great! So there's no problem with trying the side-scrolling thing again. But, I mean, in case you just want to hammer home the point here, Tyrone also responded to Cycle Gamer and said, Hollow Knight and Ori are better than 99% of big-budget AAA games. I'm glad Ubisoft is doing this. And Cycle Gamer says, your opinion/taste. If you think that side-scrolling games can be better than big-budget AAA games, if you think games like Hollow Knight and Ori are good, I don't know what to tell you, bro. That's just your opinion. It's your opinion, bro. There's not enough money in those games. It can't be good. I don't know if I've just become extra annoyed at stuff like this because I've been playing so many indie games recently. I mean, it was just the other day that I finally perfected Brotato on Steam. It's the guy that I'm weirdly proud of this, so I'm just going to leave it on screen for a little longer. 83 achievements. I got them all. Are you proud of me, Dad? But this idea that in order for a game to be good or worthy of praise or deserving of scores in the high 80s, because remember, all of this started because Lost Crown had like an 87 or an 86 on Metacritic. A side-scrolling game getting in the mid to high 80s was enough to completely break some people. I say it again, this is the problem with AAA gaming. The effect that AAA gaming is having on you and your standards and the way that you look at whether or not a video game is deserving of praise, like the things that you are looking for in a good game, AAA has ruined you. A great game can come from anywhere, it can come from any place, it can come from any budget, it can come from any platform. Like, it blows my mind that people are still doing this. Like, we're only like a few years removed from Undertale and Five Nights at Freddy's being literally the only two games people were talking about. And both of those games were made for like a nickel each, split between them, maybe. That was, what the God, I'm not funny. If you think money has any connection to whether or not a game is well designed, you're just dumb. And I'm sorry that this is how you look at such an awesome medium like video games. Jesus. Okay, toodles.